Welcome to another episode of What We Drive, and this car next to me needs no introduction. Yes, this is the Nissan GT-R, the 2018 version after the facelift. Now, I don't want to get into the whole discussion about whether the GT-R is a supercar or not, but there's one thing to be certain. This guy right here is an absolute supercar killer, a Godzilla as many call it. The GT-R lineup can be traced back about 5 decades, and even today, it is still one of the most discussed cars on the internet with a big fanboy base. So, what's so special about this car, and what is it like to drive? Is it still a legendary icon in the car world? Today, it is my pleasure to bring you my review of the Nissan GT-R. Right off the bat, let's take a look at the heart of the Godzilla, because that's the most important thing to this car, the performance. Now, let's open the hood, and you can see that this hood is not hydraulic. You actually have to use a hood prop and prop it in place. That's definitely going to save you half a pound. But anyways, underneath the hood, we have a 3.8-liter twin-turbocharged V6 that outputs 565 horsepower with 467 pound-feet of torque. Now, that's a lot for this V6. This V6 also paired with a 6-speed dual-clutch transmission can go from 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds. Well, the official data says 2.7 seconds, but more like around 3 seconds. And at the top speed of it, it's 195 miles per hour. Now, that's definitely into the supercar territory, which is why it destroys so many cars more expensive. And the interesting thing is, this engine, as you can see, is in red and silver, and it's hand-built by one person. You can see the plates right here. So sort of similar to the AMG lineup that also has a plate right in front of it. So in case if the engine ever blows up, you know exactly who to look for. But now let's take a listen of how it sounds. Let's talk about design. The overall design of the GT-R, to me, it's always been very unique and special as its own class. It's not screaming luxury like some other exotic crazy cars, and it's not low-key either. I think this car is taking its own approach. You look, so all the other cars in its performance range are trying to be slimmer and smaller and lower with more streamlined body, but this car, you see right next to me, it is quite a big car. With all the angles and sharp edges, it just looks very strong. When I picture a Japanese warrior, the warrior from the East with a katana and the plated armor, this is how I see the GT-R. In the front face, you got the GT-R badge right here, and overall it's a really wide front face, and on the bonnet, you got actual real air holes where the air flows through it, which is really cool. And then, the most distinguishable part of the design are the headlights. For the facelifted models, you have the Thunderbolt shaped LED strips, which is really cool and sharp. And overall, this car with those headlights and the overall shape is just very, very angry. This car is angry, and it's definitely ready to take on any opponents coming its way. Now, let's take a look at the back of this car, which is where I think the GT-R's design's soul is. So first of all, right off the bat, you got 4 exhaust pipes, and they're extremely big. They can fit my foot. That sort of tells you how much power it has. But the most important element in the back here is not a GT-R badge, and of course it's not a Nissan badge, are actually 4 of these rounded taillights. You see, for the past 5 decades, the GT-Rs always have those 4 taillights. And when this car, the R35, first came out in 2007, people and fanboys were like, yes, we still have those taillights. That sort of speak of how iconic they are. Of course, now they become more modern with the LED ring in it, but still, without those 4 taillights, a GT-R, it's never going to be a true GT-R. Now, come to the side of a GT-R, you see, you got this line that goes up and up and up and up. Everything is so normal, really sporty until this point. Now, it goes down like, a very sporty car is supposed to be, but then in the back, besides the wing right here, it just takes a really sharp turn. And I think this is really that key highlight of the design of the GT-R on the side. And for your information, those wheels are 20-inch aluminum alloy wheels. And they're really big, especially the one in the back has such a depth to it. And right here you have the GT-R little logo, and of course this entire, air ventilation hole is made of carbon fiber. But the magic happens behind this body panel, which is on the axle. This is what Nissan calls the Transaxle, and that means transmission and axle in one. And what it is that the transmission is not in the front with the engine like a regular car. It's all the way in the back here, and it's sitting on the axle itself. And what it does, of course, is going to help with the weight distribution for this car, but it also makes the GT-R the only transaxle-based all-wheel drive system front engine car in the world. The interior of the Nissan GT-R is enjoyable, to say the least. Now, pardon me for the engine noise because that's just the way the car is. But this is what Nissan does really well, is the amount of leather used everywhere. First of all, you got the leather on the steering wheel. They feel really nice and soft and thick. And thick leather, again, on the dashes, center console, on both sides of the center console, and on the seat. And in the middle, even the shifter is wrapped in nice and soft leather. Shifter is towards the shorter side. The actual panel that holds the shifter is also in leather. Wow, that to me is an extra mile of attention to detail. The seats also have really thick leather cushioning. You can feel them when you press down onto them. This seat reminds me of that Infiniti Q50 that I did a while ago. That one also has the Nissan famous, what I call sofa leather seats. The R35 Nissan GT-R before the facelift, in terms of center console and everything, is just really unusual and just very complicated. But on this newer model, I can tell you that everything now feels more premium and more organized. In the middle here are the three most important switches on the Nissan GT-R. The first one, although labeled with the differential sort of thing, it is for the transmission. The second one is labeled with the suspension, and the one in the very right has a wheel label on it. So what they do is, now it's in normal, but for the first one, if you put it down, it becomes save, and that has a blue light to it. This is supposed to save fuel by controlling the transmission. And for the second one, the suspension, you put it into comf. Of course, comf stands for comfortable, and that's supposed to make the suspension a little more comfortable. But that's not the hardcore part. You see, on every switch, there's an R label, which is the same type of font as the R in the GT-R badge. When you push them up, they turn red, and the way the GT-R is supposed to be driven in the most hardcore situation is you have all three of them switched to R. So now all three R's are lighted in red, and you're ready for serious business. The steering wheel, compared to the older R35 GT-R, it just feels a lot more premium. And you just got that really nice thick leather, even on the horn. And on the horn, there's the big GT-R logo, which reminds you that you're driving something pretty special. And then you got two shifting pedals. They move with the wheel. I only wish they're made of metal, because those ones, you can tell they're sort of more plasticky. Moving on to the center console screen. Now, in the middle, from the first sight, it just seems like regular Nissan center console screen, nothing too special about this. Nowadays, we're so used to smartphones with the instantaneous response with the minimum amount of pressure, but on this screen, it still feels like something from the lost era. You gotta really press onto it, feel that pressure, and wait a little bit for it to react to your inputs. But all these are not important, because people who bought this car, they aren't just gonna be playing with the screen all the time, because this screen has something quite amazing, which is the function button on the right. Now you press that, and that brings this crazy amount of dials to you. You got 5 pages, well actually 6 in total, the last one being a timer. But what I'm trying to say here is, you can see every aspect of this car. For example, the first page shows you the oil temperature from the engine, transmission oil temperature. You go into different page, it tells you how much boost you have, and you can also see the amount of, you know, steering you're doing, speed. It just has everything essential to track day. And that's really, really cool because you don't really see this in many cars. Again, of course, these are all customizable. You can choose which screen to display whatever factor. And it's almost like a video game, as if you're playing like a racing video game. You know, you can switch the heads-up display to see different aspects of this car. Well, actually, this has something to do with this screen right here, because this screen is co-developed with Polyphony Digital, I think. That's the company that makes the Gran Turismo game on the PlayStation. So now that kind of explains why this car has so many amazing little dials in the center screen. So as for the starter, you can see I put the transmission and suspension all in the most comfortable setting, because right now we're in city, driving in city, and right away you can feel that this car definitely packs a lot of power. But as for a GT car, you know, the GT-R, first part of it is Gran Turismo, and for a GT car, you can see the suspension, even in the most comfortable setting, it is still really punishing and harsh. So now we're in the more traffic jammed situation right here, and this car still packs so much power. I think it sort of makes sense because, you know, in the emblem or in the badge, GT-R badge, you can see that R is way bigger than GT combined and is painted in red. And I think that sort of tells you that this car focuses more on the racing part of it instead of the Gran Turismo part of it. Okay, I'm gonna switch my transmission into R, suspension to R, and that. So we'll get ready for this straight line acceleration. Wow. Now that that was fast. This car is fast. 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. It's no joke. Absolutely no joke. The handling in this car, wow, that is just amazing. You can really, really, truly feel the mechanical limited differential doing its job. The grip of this car is just insane. Like, I was even thinking, how is it possible? This is a front engine car, but the way the technology that Nissan gave this car, all of them are just on point. Like, you can tell this car from day one, it was just designed and made to be competitive, to be fast. And you can also hear that when you drive this car, you can hear the transmission doing its job. You know, that's the way it is. Even though with the facelifted version, it is supposed to be a little better and updated, it's still the way it was originally. You can hear all the movements, the mechanical actions happening in the transmission, which is really nice and interesting. I've been into the original R35 GT-R about 2 weeks ago, and as a passenger, it just doesn't feel comfortable. This car, I'm not saying it's comfortable, however, it is improved. The interior material and the seats, you know, just the overall driving experience of this car is a little more refined. Of course, it might not be as refined as the much more expensive competitors from Italy and, you know, but I think for the kind of car it is, wow. I can see why people call this car a Godzilla. What? And the braking, see, it just brakes into corners and it handles the corners so well. It glues to the ground, the grip of this car. I think that's what makes this car really, really shines, is the grip. Wow, this power, it's no joke. You know, from the V6, the way it's being tuned, this is an amazing engine. It packs just so much punch and delivers to you really nicely and quickly. But there's one thing, if you want the most out of it, you want, you know, the more sporty driving, I suggest that you put this car into manual mode, because that, especially at higher speed, you have more control of the car and it just overall feels much more sporty. In automatic, this car still isn't the best for, you know, the most hardcore and sport driving, maybe for launch control. But if you want the most exciting experience, then the manual mode is the way to go. You know, I want to say this car, it tries to make you drive fast, but I think trying is not the word here. This car, it teases you to drive fast. Absolutely brutal and insane. I still remember in the movie Fast and Furious 6, in the opening scene, the first ever car that came into the scene was Brian's R35 GT-R. That beautiful mountain roads and the way this car took corners, the way it accelerated, everything was nothing but impressive. The Skyline GT-R was also featured in every episode of the franchise, and that speaks of how important this car is to the movie and to many car lovers. And I can see no reason other than this car being the iconic legend it has always been. Nowadays, many people said that the newer GT-R is no longer that legendary GT-R, doesn't have the heritage and whatnot. I disagree. I think Nissan really gave this car all its best, and you can feel it from every time you turn the steering wheel and pull the shifter and push your foot on the gas pedal. With that being said, the Nissan GT-R is still a Godzilla, still that warrior, a monster from the east, and still an absolute supercar killer. And it will still continue to be that legendary icon in the car world. This is what we drive, and I will see you soon in the next video.